In relation to payroll, so I think resilience, I guess, requires a few different things. Obviously, the people involved, the payroll staff, and then obviously outside of things, the tech and the systems. So I guess a twofold approach, but having the right tech in place to make sure the system is robust, error-proof, or as error-proof as possible, and then having the right staff to be able to use those systems without them getting stressed out, so to speak. So I think they both support each other, the people and the tech. But I think that's what's essentially critical for an effective and efficient payroll system.
In Australia, especially, I think we have very complex EBAs, very complex workplace agreements, and often they go across multiple countries as well. So how your payroll team has to be resilient to all those differences is like really complex, right? Like they're juggling a lot of things.
Smarter times, stronger teams. Welcome to the BundyPlus Podcast.
Welcome back to the BundyPlus Podcast. Welcome, Levon.
Thanks, Steve. Good to be back.
Hope you had some good time off.
Yeah, much needed reset and reconnection with the fam.
Cool. This episode, I want to focus on one thing that I discovered over Christmas, and that's the word resilience. And I immediately thought with payroll. So just sort of stepping back a bit, I'm pretty well addicted to learning, which is really weird because I know your family are teachers, right? So I'm the opposite.
Yeah.
So I came across a podcast called Fly by a ex-Qantas pilot who went through some pretty traumatic times where his engine blew up, and he ended up creating this podcast called Fly, and it's about resilience. And it immediately made me think about payroll of all things, well, amongst other things, and how resilience in payroll is like really crucial because there's so many aspects of payroll, right?
No, yeah, for sure. So many, I guess, moving parts and such a critical process because at the end of the day, it comes down to people getting paid. So,
Yep.
you know.
Yeah, exactly. So if I'm going to take a little bit of a leaf out of Richard's book, what does the word resilience mean to you? And I'm not saying like payroll-wise, just in general.
In general, resilience, I guess, just means with your ability to deal with any time of adversity, stress, pressure, and how you handle that.
Yeah, I'm pretty like exactly the same. When I think of resilience, it's also having that full tank. So when you are under that stress, that you need to have that resilience. I mean, obviously your tank goes down and down and down. If you're in a very vulnerable or tired state, you're not going to be very resilient to that person screaming on the phone, my pay's not here, or you just can't deal with it. So it actually plays a huge part in payroll. So when I say that, so what do you think resilience is as far as payroll goes?
In relation to payroll, so I think resilience, I guess, requires a few different things. Obviously, the people involved, the payroll staff, and then obviously outside of things, the tech and the systems. So I guess a twofold approach, but having the right tech in place to make sure the system is robust, error-proof, or as error-proof as possible, and then having the right staff to be able to use those systems without them getting stressed out, so to speak. So I think they both support each other, the people and the tech. But I think that's what's essentially critical for an effective and efficient payroll system.
In Australia, especially, I think we have very complex EBAs, very complex workplace agreements, and often they go across multiple countries as well. So how your payroll team has to be resilient to all those differences is like really complex, right? Like they're juggling a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, you've got that. You've got, the rights, which I guess is tied into employee rights and welfare, which is also tied into the awards and the EBAs. So being able to manage that and obviously making sure that, people get paid on time and as accurately as possible.
Yeah, exactly. So, like if I think of resilience in payroll in Australia, it's like it's not optional, right? It's literally about survival.
Yeah.
Cool. Have you got any tips?
Tips for resilience?
Yeah, in payroll. Yeah,
Yeah, use BundyPlus.
cold plug.
Tips for resilience, yeah, sure. So one, what we were just speaking about with the awards, making sure that you're up to date with what awards are applicable or in play in your industry, having the right tech, or some of the issues that I think that we've seen and where we've been able to evolve our systems to be able to provide a more resilient system. So for example, like cloud versus desktop systems. So, with desktop, it's more, I guess, you don't have a lot to fall back on if there's a computer goes down or a server goes down and like you lose all your data or the clock goes down. So having that cloud storage where you don't have to rely on any on-prem servers or software. To avoid things like time theft at the point of time capture. So how's that being done? Is it just someone manually writing in a timesheet? Because we know how that can end up. So having, whether it's some form of biometric process, whether it's fingerprint, face rec, and then the payroll integration side of things. So, if having a TNA system that supports and interfaces with your payroll system for, I guess, better efficiency and streamline. So there's less moving parts. It's not one person sending a timesheet to one person, they're approving it, they're making changes, then that's getting sent to the payroll person, and then they're manually inputting that into payroll. That just leaves more room for error.
Let's talk about the emotional toll on payroll and how being resilient in that emotional sort of side. Like for me, it's about trying to reduce the amount of exceptions that you need to deal with. Like if you're bombarded on a Friday afternoon with 100 exceptions you need to deal with, that's stress, right?
Mm-hmm.
So having a platform that helps support minimizing those exceptions is probably going to be key. Have you got any thoughts?
Yeah. So, and even just from experience with, for example, being on help desk in the early days, where you deal with some of those people who are going through it, and when Wednesday, Thursday, which are typically the common payroll days, and whether it's they forgot to address something prior to that, and they're forced to deal with it last minute, and that obviously adds to all of the stress. So, outside of making sure everyone's supported emotionally, and I guess that you're reviewing each other's processes, and then also just making sure that you've taken the right steps leading up to that, and that you're not forced to deal with it last minute during payroll or during payday, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so on the back of that, since the staff or especially the payroll staff are the ones that are absorbing that stress, what do you think are the ways to kind of like mitigate that or deal with it?
Mitigation, stick in my lane in that I would always recommend reviewing timesheets daily. So you're looking at the previous days. So you're not looking at what is a week's worth, because I don't know about you, but I can't remember what I had for tea like last Sunday. So how am I going to remember what time I clocked out if I forgot to clock out? So having that sort of learnt habit, I think makes you just less reason to create stress in that trying to chase up those timesheets. Because I'm sure, you've been on support and you can probably hear it in people's voices that they are stressed out because there's employees screaming for their pay and I want to get this done or I can't find this. I think even in life in general, if you can avoid or try to plan ahead or plan the best you can to avoid these things, whether it means just setting a time in your calendar every day, 9 o'clock, check previous timesheets. So it becomes that real habit. So that would be sort of my advice on that.
Yeah, and you could imagine the people who are on fortnightly, monthly pay cycles, if you kind of let that all go, how much you've got to deal with last minute. And that stress kind of, exactly. And that stress compounds. Like it might come from the employee first saying, hey, where's my pay, or I was underpaid, or whatever it is, and that stress becomes the payroll staff stress, and that makes its way through to our help desk. So it compounds.
Yeah, it was actually funny because I thought of, I related to the Fly podcast again, in that, like, imagine, like, you will only tell your friends about the bad landing, right? Yeah, that was so hard. It's not the other, dozens of landings you've had. In payroll, exactly the same. You'll only tell your friend, oh, I didn't get paid this week, not all the previous years that you've been paid perfectly. So
it's that negative bias.
That negative bias, exactly right.
Okay, so we've touched on, or we've defined what resilience is and the importance in payroll. As it relates to us, how does BundyPlus support payroll resilience?
Great question. Obviously, BundyPlus has been around for a couple of decades, and a lot of the clients we have changed platforms from one payroll to a different payroll. So for us, it's giving them the option to retain their TNA and just change going from zero to MYB or backwards and forwards, not being any biased. So being resilient to change, I think, is a key thing for BundyPlus. Probably the other thing too is technology changes, because we've gone through several series of time clocks. They're all backwardly compatible with the previous. So being resilient to that technology change has then allowed companies to even go from what is quite an old 20-year-old clock to a brand new clock, latest technology, AI face recognition, with almost seamless change. So very resilient on that part of it.
And while still supporting, for example, like the mobile app, having a combination of teams who are using on-prem TNA versus remote workforces.
Yeah, and probably one of the
Upwards
sorry.
compatible as well, both ways.
Yeah, exactly. And like one of the huge benefits we had when COVID struck is we'd gone from factories that were, or offices that were all purely physical based, to then going remote overnight.
Yeah.
So we were then able to transition those employees to mobile clocking and kept on clocking their time. So we were actually resilient to COVID as far as capturing in payroll times to an amazing extent. And as business owners need that flexibility without having to, totally redo their infrastructure, or, end of the day, they still want to improve their timesheets. It's the time capture side that needs to be that rock solid part, and they get, as many options as they can.
Yeah, we forecasted COVID pretty well. Huh? What was the actual timeline of when we had released the mobile app? Because it was before COVID.
It was before COVID, yeah.
I want to say
And
maybe
it was
2019 or something,
yeah,
maybe even
and
slightly earlier.
I mean, you think of, back then there was a whole debate between working at home and working in the office, and, they said, no, we'll never work hybrid, it'll never work. And when you're forced, you make it work, right?
Yeah. Even
Exactly.
the face rec side of things, like the whole, in the COVID era, being contactless and that paranoia that was around about, wiping surfaces and everything like that. And so, we had the devices where they were contactless. I mean, you just walk up to the device and it clocks you in. So that kind of, saved or almost in a sense future-proofed, or for that period of time.
Yep.
Yeah, still made our systems, I guess, applicable or in with the times and the
Yep.
culture and the craziness of COVID.
Yep. Exactly. So Levon, payroll future, it's like, it's changing every day. There's a lot of noise about it. Like, where do you see the future in payroll, and how is it going to be resilient to those future changes?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I think with the resilience, or I think what stops a lot of people or holds people back, is just that resistance to change. So I guess trusting in the systems and staying up to date, whether it's, making sure that you're with the newer technologies, you're not using paper timesheets, because, you'd be surprised, we know this well, how many people are still using paper timesheets, and again, how much room for error that creates, or time theft. So, making sure that you've evaluated your systems, your technology, adopting all of as much of the, making the process as automated as possible. Again, reducing the likelihood of error. The clocking culture, I think we see a lot of times, people want to implement a system, but they just see the short side of having to go through the training process and training their staff, training their team to implement a new system. But it's well worth it, or it pays off, in the future. So not being so short-sighted, I guess, with change. And I get maybe even better transparency, for example, like with the mobile app, having your staff being able to view their timesheets, or having a bit of an ESS portal or side of things for the employees to see that. So you've got a lot more transparency between the employee, the tech, the payroll team. So yeah, those are a few things. And yeah, in this day and age with AI, I know it's still kind of in its infancy in relation to payroll, but just being mindful of that and keeping up to date with, being able to leverage that within payroll when, or if that is already currently available.
Yeah, I think 100% right. Training for me is the key thing, and that whole communication of why we're doing it. This is why this is how to do it. Being fully transparent, and when you think you've done enough training and communicate, just double it, because it's not going to hurt, right? Yeah, and just touching on AI, that's going to bring in a whole new range of lack of trust.
Yep.
Like, especially when it comes to timesheets, and if AI gets it wrong and says, "Hey, this person didn't clock in right," there still needs to be that human factor into it.
Okay, so I think we've covered a fair bit about resilience and the importance in payroll. Any kind of final tips or thoughts about all of that?
Final tips. I still come back to the daily review. That's pretty important. Keeping your staff trained, up to date with the latest regulations. You don't want to get lulled into a false insecurity that the EBA hasn't changed, or the payments haven't changed. You need to make sure that you're up to date with that. Keep an eye on the technology. Maybe always thinking your payroll, whether it's on a payroll or by payroll basis, is like, how can this be improved? How can I make this payroll or this pay run more resilient to what I just found here? Like, learn from the mistakes that you've found from either employees, and that could be, the buddy clocking or too much time spent or those sort of weird looking clockings. Yeah, so that would be my main tips. Yourself?
Very good. I mean, outside of what has already been mentioned, I mean, yeah, just reviewing whether it's maybe, at the end of each year. I know, we always hear or people go by that if it's not broken, don't fix it. But technology evolves quite rapidly and more rapidly as we go on. So just making sure that you're aware of what's out there, and your system might not be broken, so to speak, but it can probably be better or more efficient as we move further into the future. So just stay up to date, do your reviews, like you mentioned, make sure everyone's trained, not just your team but your employees, giving them the confidence and the trust that they're for example, with the facial rec, we get this question come up a lot in terms of privacy, so just ensuring that. And use BundyPlus, shameless plug.
One of the things I'd probably recommend, leaning on the learn by mistakes, have some mock scenarios. Just go, okay, like if you've got a very small payroll team, there's only that one person that does it. Okay, what if she wasn't there or he wasn't there that pay run? Who does it? Are they trained to do it? Do they know what to do? Because you want to be dealing with those things in a controlled manner. And then when it's uncontrolled and you've got people screaming for their pays. The other thing to try or say, okay, just say I did get a knock on the door from Fair Work. Have I got all the auditing? Have I got the record keeping requirements that they're going to say, show me your record keeping? Is that all in place?
Yeah, having that compliance and redundancy, so that we've dealt with that a lot in the past. The payroll person has all of a sudden resigned unexpectedly, and then they're just left to deal with the whole system as with no understanding or experience. So having a bit of a fallback backup plan.
Yeah, so I mean that sort of highlights what I'm saying. Like, as you said, we get people almost weekly saying, Mary's gone, we don't have a login. Like, they clearly haven't got this in place.
Yeah.
So that'd be one of the key things that I'd look at.
Yeah, that's actually a very good example of the resilience. I mean, if you're, it's kind of like a house of cards. If all it takes is one person to leave, and then you can't pay people, then it's probably not a very resilient system.
And
that's not even the tech side of things.
Yeah, that's right. And typically payroll is one of the biggest outgoings for businesses. So imagine if that bit left, like you just can't.
Yeah.
So pretty key. So I think we've probably covered, like, there's maybe only 50% of the items in resilience and payroll. Maybe we might touch on it again, but thank you, Levon, for your time on this episode. Look forward to the next one.
Nice one, Steve. First one for the year.
Yep.
Catch you in the next one.
All right. Catch you later. Bye.
Cool. Peace out, everyone.